What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Trails in the Sky has released a few days ago, and if you're like me and this is the first Trails game that you've actually played inside the series, there are quite a few things that this game actually introduced to you in the beginning of the game, and you may have missed them if you're like me as well and didn't necessarily read through all the tutorial that they actually gave you. After getting stuck on a couple of boss fights, I actually have quite a bit of combat tips, and outside of combat tips, some exploration tips that'll definitely help you no matter what difficulty you are playing on. The first thing we need to talk about are turn order buffs. So inside this game, you'll notice that there are buff icons on the left side of the screen on the turn order on not only you and your allies, but also enemies as well. These buffs have a range of different effects, like for example, if you see the arts icon and a 0 underneath, that means that your arts are free that turn, as well as they will cast instantly. If you see an exclamation point, then you will get a critical or guaranteed critical on not only physical but also magical attacks as well. And there's also some other utility buffs like gaining increased Sepith when killing an enemy. These turn order buffs are really strong and will help you clear almost every one of your fights if you're playing on Nightmare difficulty, but you'll definitely want to be careful because, as I said earlier, not only do you and your allies get these buffs, but the enemies also get these buffs as well. Even though the enemies also get these buffs, you can actually steal these buffs from the enemies, which leads into my next tip, which is going to be relating to S-breaks. S-breaks are essentially the ultimates inside this game. Whenever you use an S-break, you will use all of the CP you have. You need to have at least 100 CP to use an S-break, and when you do use an S-break, you will take the turn of whatever is before you. I'm not sure if all S-breaks have this, as I have not completed the game yet, but all S-breaks that I've seen in the game so far have a effect called steal bonus. What this effect does is it allows you to steal the turn order bonuses on enemies that are actually hit by your S-break. So if you're fighting a boss and you see it has a buff that it definitely should not have, like a guaranteed crit or a insta-cast art, you can go ahead and use an S-break to not only steal the turn order of that boss, but also steal the turn order bonus that the boss also had as well. There are also some crafts for some characters that have this steal bonus effect as well, so you can also use those crafts to steal the turn order bonus as well. Another tip that I have for S-breaks is forcing a character to actually be able to move twice. If you did not know, in this game you can actually pull up the S-break menu when anything is happening in the middle of a command battle. So you can do it after a craft, you can do it after a art goes off, you can do it after an enemy art goes off, you could do it after a burst or a chain attack. You can even do it after another S-break as long as you have that 100 CP. So for example, using a character like Shara, you can use Sylphin Whip, one of her crafts, to go ahead and delay the enemy, and then use her S-break, Sadist Whip, to go ahead and delay the enemies even further, effectively giving Shara 2 turns and delaying the enemies twice. The next tip I have is regarding to enemy arts. So enemies are actually able to use arts or magic inside this game, and it normally takes about 2 turns for them to go ahead and charge up their arts, exactly how it works for you, unless they have that 0 icon next to their turn order. But what you can actually do with certain characters is you can actually use moves that impede the actual casting of the art. You can also get a Quartz that allows you to impede at about a 60% rate, but anytime you impede an enemy, you will cancel their art and they will have to do a normal attack on their turn rather than doing the art that they were charging up. So this impede mechanic is very helpful because some enemies actually have some arts like Shadow Spear, which have a chance to instant KO you. One very important thing you want to keep in note inside this game is anytime that you stun an enemy, you're able to do a follow-up attack on them. And anytime you hit them while they're also stunned, you're able to do a follow-up attack on them. So for example, what you're able to do is you're able to stun an enemy, get a follow-up attack, and then if another character had the turn directly after that stun, you can hit that same stun enemy and get another follow-up attack on them. So for example, in this clip, I use a craft to go ahead and stun an enemy, and while this enemy is stunned, I'll go ahead and get my first follow-up attack, and then I'll use an S-break to steal my turn again, and then hit the enemy again. Because the enemy is stunned, I'll get a second follow-up attack. Another cool mechanic they have inside this game is Overdrive, which I would say is a liken to like Kaioken from Dragon Ball Z. Except there's no drawbacks for using it. Overdrive essentially gives you a guaranteed crit on not only physical but also magical attacks. It buffs the stats of your character depending on what character you're using or what character uses Overdrive. You will get different stat buffs, and also it will clear any debuffs and grant you debuff immunity. Debuffs are actually really good inside this game. If an enemy is able to land things like Seal or Blind or even Mute onto you, it can take away your whole kit. So saving Overdrive or just having Overdrive there to use to clear those debuffs if you don't have any items or if you don't want to spend a turn using items is a very, very good thing to actually have. Let's quickly go over Quartz inside this game and how Quartz work. Quartz are actually going to be how you slot all your spells inside this game, and the strength of your arts and how many actual arts you have are going to depend not only on the quartz that you have, but also how many orbment slots you have unlocked on your orbment. You'll need Sepith of the various elements to buy quartz from the Orbital factories, as well as unlock the orbment slots on your orbment. The way that you'll go about getting spells is each character will have separate lines. For example, here you'll see on Joshua's orbment quartz, he has a line that goes from action 2 to cast 2, and then he has another line that goes from action 2 to Ruby Shield. This is 2 separate lines. So let's take a look at one of the art charts. This is the art chart for water. Let's say I wanted to get something like Diamond Dust. I would need to stack up on one line, preferably one of the longer lines, an elemental value of 5 water and 5 light. This would give me access to the art Diamond Dust, as well as any other art that uses those elemental values as well, like Latia on this art chart as well. If I was to add an elemental value of 2 to wind to the line as well, I would then get access to La Tierra. So you want to make sure when you're going for arts that you're stacking the elemental value on the same line so that you're able to go ahead and stack the elemental values properly. Next, we'll be going over stats and what stats have helped me tremendously inside the early game so far. Now, I'm on Nightmare difficulty, so I'm not sure how hard the other difficulties are and how much help these stats may be to you in other difficulties, or whether you might even need to invest in these stats to clear content on the other difficulties. But for Nightmare, the stats that have been helping me the most are accuracy and speed, outside of like the stats that normally help other characters like attack and defense and stuff like that. Accuracy and speed have helped me tremendously, just because anytime you miss a hit inside this game, the enemy gets a free follow-up onto you, and anytime the enemy gets to go more than you, they'll just be doing more damage. So a combination of not having speed and accuracy leads to you not going as much as the enemy and you missing a lot more than the enemy misses, which allows them to just do way more damage to you than they should be doing. So focusing on those 2 stats and getting those 2 stats pretty decent will definitely help you inside the early game, especially if you're on Nightmare difficulty. Now, in terms of accuracy, just putting on like one hit quartz or putting on one accessory that gives you accuracy has been enough for me so far, but I'm sure you'll need to put up your accuracy even more when you start getting into the late game and enemies are a higher level. Now let's hop in the kitchen and let's go over some cooking really quick here. Now, cooking inside this game is actually extremely good. Not only does it give you HP or EP, it'll also give you buffs like clearing debuffs or giving you stat buffs like strength. The way you'll go about getting recipes is eating new food that you've never eaten before. You'll be able to get different recipes by going to different portions on the map and going to different bars and restaurants and buying the food from the vendors. Once you've bought the food and also eaten it for the first time, you'll then go over to the cooking menu and you'll be able to cook that recipe. Once you cook the recipe for the first time, you'll be able to get buffs for your whole party, such as strength or speed or even extra HP. You'll be able to not only craft good versions of the food, but you'll also be able to craft bad versions of the food or even exceptional versions of the food, depending on who you use to craft the food. And it'll also tell you in the menu who has better proficiency with crafting that food. If you craft an exceptional version of that food, you'll get another buff on top of the buff that you normally get for successfully cooking the dish for the first time. Last but not least, my final tip is going to be related to the overall progression of the game. As you explore each region with the main story, you'll go to a next region. Once you go to that next region, you will not be able to go back to the previous region, or at least I have not been able to go back to the previous region yet. So all the items that you see in that region, like gear and accessories, you won't have access to those accessories or gear once you leave that region for the main story quest. So make sure that you get everything that you want to get from the regions that you're in before you move on to the next region and finish the story, and you should be good to go in regards to how you build your characters. And that is it in regards to all the tips that I have for Trails in the Skies combat and some exploration tips and other tips as well. I tried to cover everything that I know about the game so far and everything that I find out about the game so far. And I think this game is actually very, very deep if you want to take it there. I'm not finished the game yet. As I said before, I'm only like 25 hours into the game so far on Network difficulty, and I am trying to do everything that the game has to offer. Once I am done, I definitely plan to do a review for the game. I've also been streaming my playthrough every day on Twitch. I'll probably be live by the time this video goes up as well. Let me know if any of these tips helped you out inside the comments, or if you have any tips that I did not actually cover here. Definitely put them inside the comments as well, because I may need them for my playthrough, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are new to the series as well that would appreciate those tips as well. So thank y'all for watching as always, and I'll catch you on the next video. Be easy, be safe, y'all, and peace.